The skies above Valtera turned red without warning. It wasn't fire or clouds, but something darker, something alive. Villages burned, and armored creatures ripped through walls like paper. People screamed, scattered, and vanished beneath the crushing weight of beasts no one had ever seen before. One of those beasts was called Skarnak. It stood 3 stories tall, with black horns twisting like blades and armor thick as tanks. Its mouth stretched open with fire and poison, and its eyes glowed like stars ready to die. Skarnak didn't fight for glory or gold, it fought for hunger. The Galactic Council sent fleets. The fleets burned. Elite Deathworld hunters came next. They disappeared. Then came experimental weapons, orbital strikes, and even psychic firewalls. Nothing worked. Skarnak didn't just kill, it erased. Entire armies vanished under its claws. But deep in the eastern mountains, far from the main battlefields, a young girl named Kayla survived. She was from a tribe with no weapons, only music and stone. She had eyes the color of silver moons and walked with a calmness the world no longer understood. Kayla had once touched Skarnak and lived. The story reached planets, systems, even warlords. Many thought it was a myth. But one man heard it, and he believed. His name was Ryan, a human from the fractured Earth colony of Dern 5, a place that taught children to survive by chewing fire and drinking pain. Ryan didn't believe in gods, only promises. He didn't know Kayla, never met her, had no reason to care. But the day he saw her image in a cracked relay transmission, singing while the sky fell behind her, something inside him snapped. She wasn't just surviving. She was calling something bigger than fear. Ryan stole a dropship from a peacekeeper outpost. He flew alone into a death zone marked with 1,000 red flags. There was no plan, only a name and a broken image. Every checkpoint tried to stop him. He went silent, invisible, unreachable. Not even satellites found him again. The Council listed him as missing. Earth listed him as insane. But the old ones, those who still remembered the first burning, whispered a word the others had forgotten. Champion, not for armies, but for hearts. Not for war, but for something even more dangerous. Ryan arrived in the valley where Skarnak slept. It had built a nest of bones and melted steel, larger than a city dome. No one entered that place, and returned. Even time itself seemed afraid to pass near it. But Ryan walked straight into the dark with nothing but a rope, a pouch of stims, and a strange rhythm in his chest. He didn't go to fight the beast. He went to listen. Every survivor described Skarnak's scream, but no one had ever mentioned what it sounded like when the monster breathed. Ryan heard it. Deep, slow, and broken. Like thunder trying to cry. Then he found Kayla, shackled to a stone pillar surrounded by bones of kings and tyrants. She wasn't weeping. She wasn't begging. She was humming. And every time she sang, the beast stirred, but didn't strike. Skarnak listened too. As if the girl held a secret even the monster couldn't destroy. And Ryan whispered 4 words before stepping into view. I came for you. Ryan didn't hesitate as the dust swallowed him. His boots touched ground soaked in ash and acid. The valley had no birds, no insects, no echoes. Every sound died the moment it was made. Even his breath felt like it didn't belong here. But he walked on. The bones he stepped over weren't just from animals. They were war machines, broken mechs, collapsed bunkers, and alien corpses still sealed inside power armor. Whole battlefields had been crushed and folded into Skarnak's lair. Each step was a step across the grave of a nation. Far ahead, the beast stirred. Its spiked tail twitched like a serpent. The ground cracked under its breath. Smoke rose from its nostrils as it exhaled a heat that melted the rocks around it. Ryan stopped walking. Not because he feared death, but because the next moment would define everything he came for. Kayla stood unmoved. Chains wrapped her ankles and wrists, glowing with red energy. Her body was bruised, her skin covered in dust, but her eyes were calm. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply turned her head slowly and looked at the human walking toward her. Skarnuk growled. It wasn't loud, but it shook the earth. Its head turned, massive horns brushing stone walls as it moved. Its glowing eyes narrowed, watching Ryan. No one had ever approached this close and remained standing. But the beast didn't strike. It waited. Ryan reached into his pouch and pulled out a thin disc. It was old Terran tech, obsolete in most systems. But this wasn't a weapon. It was a recorder. He pressed the button, and a song began to play. Not a battle cry, not a human anthem, just a simple lullaby Kayla had once sung in the transmission. The effect was instant. Skarnuk froze. Its growl turned into a deep rumble, like a purr mixed with thunder. Its claws scraped the ground but didn't lift. The monster didn't charge. It listened. Every scarred inch of its body went still, as if caught in a memory that hurt and healed at the same time. Kella's lips parted. She gasped. Her fingers trembled around the chains. She knew that melody. It was hers, sung long ago before her capture. How could this stranger carry it here? Why would a human cross galaxies to bring her own voice back to her in the jaws of death? Ryan didn't speak yet. He let the music carry the silence. Let the ancient steel and burned earth remember something softer. He stepped forward again. Slower this time, his hands raised. He wasn't armed. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't here to fight. The beast's head dropped low, just above Ryan. Its breath washed over him like steam from a volcano. One wrong move, and he would vanish. But Ryan met its glowing eyes with steady focus. Then he did something no one expected. He whispered, "Please let her go." Kayla blinked. She wasn't sure what shocked her more, the request or the tone. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't proud. It was honest. She had never heard such a human voice inside such a monster's den. And neither, it seemed, had Skarnuk. The chains snapped. The sound was sharp and final. Kayla fell forward, but Ryan caught her. She didn't resist. She looked up at him, still unsure if this was real. The beast didn't roar. It didn't attack. It simply turned its body to block the wind as they stood together in its shadow. "Why are you here?" she asked in a whisper. Ryan helped her. "Stand." His grip was gentle but firm. "Because you sang," he said quietly. "And I couldn't let the galaxy silence it." Behind them, the beast lifted its head. The fire in its throat faded. The hunger in its eyes dulled. And for the first time in recorded history, the monster that erased armies lowered itself to the ground like a pet returning home. But somewhere in the stars, warlords and generals saw the signal and panicked. They thought the beast had been weaponized by Earth, and they began to prepare their retaliation. The message spread faster than light. From war satellites to covert relay hubs, the image of the human standing beside the beast rippled across sectors. It showed the monster still breathing, unchained but calm. And beside it, a girl with silver eyes and a human holding her hand. No one knew how he did it. They only saw the impossible outcome. Skarnuk, the beast of extinction, was no longer killing. For some, it was a miracle. For others, it was a threat. Armies that had failed to control it now feared someone else had succeeded. On the council, World of Thresk, military minds debated nonstop. Some called for preemptive strikes on Earth. Others demanded the retrieval of the beast at all costs. But only one voice spoke the truth, that the monster hadn't been tamed with power, but with something no weapon could measure. Meanwhile, deep in the valley, Ryan and Kayla sat beside a fractured stone. She wrapped her arms around herself. Her voice was still shaky, but her eyes no longer wandered in fear. She finally looked at him with full attention. And then she asked the question hanging in the air. "Why me?" Ryan leaned forward and answered without delay. "Because the universe kills everything soft, and you chose to stay soft." That's power. She didn't smile, but her breath steadied. She nodded slowly, accepting that answer more than understanding. The beast stirred nearby, shifting its weight like a slumbering volcano. Even at rest, it was terrifying. But for now, it listened. Kayla explained what had happened. How her people were the first to sing Skarnok's lullaby centuries ago. How the monster wasn't born to destroy, but was twisted by those who wanted to control it. The song wasn't just a melody, it was a memory locked deep in its mind. They tortured it, she said softly. Over and over, until it forgot how to feel anything except rage. But when it hears the old song, it remembers it was more than just a weapon. Ryan clenched his fists. He had seen cruelty. Earth taught him how to live in its shadow. But he felt something sharp inside as she spoke. This wasn't just about Kayla anymore. It was about every innocent thing turned into a monster by the hands of war. He looked at the beast again. Its massive head lay on the ground. One glowing eye. Open slowly, watching them both. Ryan didn't flinch. He didn't move. He only nodded once, like two warriors acknowledging the past without speaking it aloud. Kayla stood up. She walked slowly toward the beast. Her feet were bare, her steps light. She raised her voice, not loud, but clear. She sang the melody again. This time with new strength. The valley didn't shake. The world didn't burn. Instead, silence filled the air like light after darkness. The beast responded, not with fire, but with sound. A deep rumble echoed from its throat, rising and falling in time with her voice. It wasn't a growl. It was music, broken, rough. Music all the same. Skarnok had begun to sing back. Somewhere in space, ships started moving. Red-coded messages flew between fleets. Plans were written and erased. But one thing remained constant. The galaxy didn't trust peace when it came from something they couldn't control. Ryan saw the danger before Kayla did. He knew the moment wouldn't last. Someone somewhere would decide to strike. Not just to kill the beast, but to erase what it now symbolized. Hope that couldn't be owned. He reached for his cum and opened a hidden channel. It was one only used by old Earth. Soldiers. A signal that said one thing: fall back or fight. He chose the second. It was time to prepare before the skies fell again. Kayla turned to him. They'll come for us, won't they? Ryan nodded slowly. Yes, because we did what they couldn't. And that makes us dangerous. Skarnok rose from the ground, towering over them again. But now it stood not as a weapon, but as a shield, and behind the storm, fire was already on its way. The warning came as a flicker in the sky. A flash too fast for the eye to follow. Ryan looked up just in time to see the blue shimmer of orbital drop pods breaking through the clouds. The sky wasn't angry yet, but it was waking up. He pulled Kayla close and pointed toward a canyon split through the rock. It wasn't far, but they would need to move fast. The beast followed behind them without command, its massive steps surprisingly quiet. Skarnok knew something was coming. Kayla didn't ask questions. She trusted the man who brought her a song. In hell. Together, they ran through broken stone and past the bones of ships that once tried to do what they had done with a whisper. Not even the wind dared to chase them. Behind them, the first pod hit. The impact shook the cliffs. Dust rose like smoke. From inside spilled armored soldiers, marked with red crests and glowing visors. These were not peacekeepers. These were silencers. Their job wasn't to capture. It was to erase. Ryan knew their tactics. He'd trained with them before Earth turned its eyes inward. They moved in perfect lines, used silent signals, and never hesitated. But none of their drills included fighting something like Skarnok. The beast turned its head slowly, and the air seemed to freeze. The soldiers raised their weapons and aimed. Kayla screamed. Ryan pulled her behind a fallen boulder and reached for the only tool he had left, a signal dart. It wasn't made to kill. It was made to distract. He fired it into the opposite cliff. The explosion pulled their attention for a second. That second was enough. Skarnak charged. It didn't roar. It didn't need to. The earth beneath it cracked as it moved. Its claws struck the rock wall beside the squad, sending debris crashing like thunder. 2 soldiers fell. The rest scattered. But they didn't retreat. They activated their boosters and flew into the air. Their suits lit up with countermeasures and sonic disruptors. Above, more pods streaked through the atmosphere. A second wave was on its way. Kayla covered her ears and crouched low. Ryan wrapped himself around her, shielding her from the storm. Above them, the sky turned purple from plasma fire. Skarnak swung its tail, smashing a cliffside and sending half a squad tumbling like sparks. Ryan pulled Kayla toward the canyon again. "We can't stay here," he said through the chaos. "We need to find shelter deeper in the rocks. Skarnak can handle the front, but we're the target now." Kayla nodded and followed without hesitation. The path narrowed. Jagged stones scraped their arms. The wind howled through tight curves like a warning. But inside the stone's shadow, it was harder to spot them. The sound of battle faded behind them. Then a new sound came, a high-pitched pulse followed by silence. Ryan stopped cold. He knew that sound. A hunter-class drone, small, fast, deadly. It could move through canyons, track breath patterns, and deliver pinpoint plasma shots from impossible angles. He pushed Kayla to the ground just as the shot fired. The bolt missed by inches and vaporized the rock above their heads. Ryan rolled and fired back with his sidearm. The drone dodged effortlessly. It circled back, scanning, waiting for another shot. Then Skarnak appeared at the edge of the canyon. It didn't fit between the walls, but it saw the drone. And with one short exhale, it released a sound so deep the walls shook. The drone's sensors cracked. Its lights flickered. It spun midder and crashed into the rock. Ryan stared in shock. "That wasn't just noise," he whispered. "That was frequency warfare." From a living thing, Kayla looked at him with new understanding. "It remembers everything. It just needed someone to remind it what it was made for." Ryan helped her up again. "Then we remind the galaxy next. But first we survive." Above, a command ship entered orbit. Its shadow darkened the battlefield, and a voice crackled across. "All channels, cold and final. Target the beast. Burn the valley. Leave no trace." The command ship hung in the sky like a blade waiting to drop. Its engines hummed with cold power, casting a blue glow over the valley. On the surface, squads regrouped and heavy walkers marched in, their cannons already locking onto targets. They weren't here to question. They were here to end everything. Skarnak stepped in front of the canyon mouth. Its body blocked the path completely. Ryan and Kayla crouched behind its massive shadow. The beast wasn't afraid. It stood like a mountain daring the wind to break it. But even it knew this fight was different. Ryan pulled out a small transmitter. He typed an old override code into its cracked screen. It was linked to a forgotten orbital relay network once used by Earth's deep rescue teams. If it still worked, it would draw attention they desperately needed. Kayla watched the walkers in the distance. "They're not here for me," she said quietly. "They want to erase the idea that this creature could be more than a weapon." Ryan nodded. "They fear what it means to lose control. If the beast can choose peace, then their power has no purpose." A low whine filled the air. The command ship charged its main cannon. Blue light gathered beneath its hull, swirling like a storm. One shot would wipe out the entire canyon. It wasn't an attack. It was an execution. Skarnak took a step forward. The ground cracked beneath it. Its body tensed. Its chest began to glow with a strange pulse. Kayla looked at it and whispered, "It's not going to run. It's going to fight for us." The first cannon fired. The blast hit Skarnak directly. The impact threw smoke and light in every direction. Rian shielded Kayla as stone and dust rained around them. For a moment, it felt like the entire mountain would fall. Then the smoke cleared. Skarnak was still standing, its armor smoked. Pieces of its skin cracked like burned metal. But its eyes glowed brighter than ever. It opened its mouth and released a sound so powerful it shattered the air. The walkers staggered. Troopers fell. The command ship above flickered. Kayla stood and placed her hand on Skarnak's leg. The moment she touched it, the glow around its chest expanded. A pulse shot upward toward the sky. It wasn't fire or light. It was something deeper. A frequency. Wave that touched everything within miles. The command ship trembled. Inside, officers screamed. Screens blinked and shattered. Weapons locked. Engines stalled. They had built their war machines with the strongest alloys and the sharpest minds. But they had never prepared for a monster singing back. The second cannon never fired. Ryan watched with wide eyes. "What is it doing?" he asked. Kayla replied, without looking away, telling them it remembers, that it forgives nothing. But it chooses this path. Skarnak roared again. Not with rage, but with defiance. The air shook. The troops began to retreat. Walkers malfunctioned and crumbled. The entire front line collapsed under the weight of something no tactical manual could predict. The beast took a knee. Its strength was fading. The attack had damaged it more than it showed. Kayla ran to its side and pressed her palm against its warm skin. Ryan followed, kneeling beside her. The monster they once feared was now a guardian wounded by mercy. Rian held the transmitter tightly. The old Earth signal was finally sent. It echoed through ancient channels and into forgotten networks. Somewhere someone would hear it. And if not, then at least they would know they tried. Kayla leaned against Skarnak. "It needs rest, but more are coming. This won't stop with one ship." Ryan looked at the sky. "Then we find a way to end it before the next wave lands." The sun dipped behind the mountains. A red haze bathed the broken valley. The silence left behind wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. And in that silence, a new idea was growing. A story not of destruction, but of resistance. Ryan gathered broken metal from the fallen walkers. He didn't know what he was building yet. His hands moved by instinct, guided by survival and purpose. Kayla sat beside Skarnak, pressing cloth to a wound that hissed with heat but didn't bleed. The beast was breathing slower now. Its energy was fading, but its eyes never closed. It watched the skies like it was guarding a child's dream. Each breath it took reminded them of how close they had come to being dust. "I think I can rewire this amplifier," Ryan muttered. "If I connect it to the Earth relay and push the signal through the beast's frequency, we might send a message strong enough to reach neutral sectors." Kayla looked over. "You want to tell them what happened?" "I want to show them what it became," Ryan said. "Let them see it stood down when it could have ended everything. That it made a choice, and that choice matters more than their fear." Skarnak shifted slightly, the ground rumbling with the movement. Its tail curled near Kayla protectively. The monster had become something no one could explain, a guardian that spoke through silence and stood between peace and war. The sky shimmered again. Not with cannons this time, but with dropships from a distant faction. Their symbols weren't of war. They were old Earth emblems, faded but still proud. Someone had answered the signal. Ryan stood, holding the rebuilt transmitter in one hand and a flare in the other. He fired the flare into the air, a green light bursting above the valley. It wasn't a call for help. It was an invitation to witness. The ship circled slowly, cautious but not hostile. One landed near the edge of the battlefield. Out stepped 3 figures, representatives from the outer colonies. They were human, but carried tools and scanners from every alliance. They had come to see for themselves. Kayla stood with them. She didn't speak first. Instead, she stepped aside and let the beast be seen fully. Its body wounded, its breath slow. but its posture proud and unmoving. The visitors didn't raise their weapons. They simply stared in silence. "You controlled it?" one of them asked. "No," Rain said plainly. "It chose." The representative looked confused. "Chose what?" "To listen," Kayla answered. "To remember. To protect instead of destroy." They looked again at the creature that once flattened armies. And in that moment, something changed in their expressions. Not trust, not fear, but understanding. Ryan activated the amplifier. The signal began to pulse through nearby channels. Not a call to arms. Not a broadcast of power. Just the simple melody Kayla once sang, the one that reached into the monster's mind and found something worth saving. Across nearby sectors, that song played. On battle stations, research labs, and smuggler docks. People stopped and listened. They didn't know the full story, but they knew the sound didn't come from a weapon. It came from a soul. The colonists knelt beside Skarnuk. One scanned its vitals. Another placed a glowing beacon beside its claw. Not a tracker. A shield request. The beast had been marked as protected under emergency sanctuary law. Kayla looked at Ryan. "Is this the beginning of peace?" Ryan shook his head. "No, but it's the end of silence. And that's how peace starts." The command ship that had threatened them was gone now. Its wreckage drifted in orbit. No one would come again without thinking twice. The legend of the monster who listened had taken root. Skarnuk finally closed its eyes and rested. And in that quiet moment, the galaxy took its first breath of something new. For 3 days, the valley remained silent. Skarnuk didn't move much, but it breathed steadily. Ryan repaired what equipment he could while Kayla mixed healing paste from native plants. No more ships came down, no more bombs lit the sky. It was a calm that felt like standing on the edge of something deeper. The outer colony's envoys built a temporary base nearby. They didn't interfere with the trio. Instead, they watched, recorded, and listened. They scanned the area without weapons raised. They treated the valley as sacred ground. Kayla sat on a flat stone and hummed her melody softly. It was not for the beast this time. It was for the land, the trees that had survived, the bones that now rested. The wind seemed to carry her song. Farther than before, Ryan walked up behind her and placed a blanket over her shoulders. "You're changing the way people see monsters," he said. She smiled faintly. "I didn't change anything. I just reminded them what it meant to feel." One of the envoys approached carefully. He was older than the others, wearing a faded insignia from the First Terran Alliance. "We want to tell this story across the systems," he said. "Not for politics, for hope." Kayla looked at Ryan before replying. "Only if it's told truthfully, with the pain, with the choice, and with the song." The man nodded and handed her a small transmitter. "Record it your way. We'll spread that. Not some edited council broadcast." She accepted it and turned the device on. Her voice flowed like water over stone, soft, strong, unshaken. Even Skarnuk stirred when he heard it. The song wasn't just music anymore. It was memory made real. Ryan stood guard as she sang. Not because she was in danger, but because this was her moment. The story might echo across stars, but he knew this began with one girl, one melody, and one impossible choice. That night, Ryan stared at the stars. He thought about what came next. Armies didn't forget humiliation. Governments didn't forgive what they couldn't control. There would be others. Not all would listen like the colonists said. Kayla sat beside him. "You think we'll be hunted again?" He nodded. "They'll send someone smarter, someone colder, someone who sees peace as a threat. Then we keep walking," she said. Gently, keep showing them another way. The next morning, a new message arrived. It wasn't from Earth or the colonies. It came from the neutral rings, a floating city of diplomats and mercenaries who trusted neither side. The message was short and encoded. "Envoys invited. Beast not welcome." Human negotiator required. Ryan read it twice. He looked at Kayla, then at Skarnak. They want to talk. But not to all of us. They still see him as a weapon, she said. They fear what they cannot leash. Ryan packed his gear. Then let's go show them what a free monster stands for. Skarnak rose slowly. Its muscles flexed with pain. But not weakness. It walked beside them without chains. Without orders, without threat. It followed because it chose to. That choice was more powerful than any treaty. As they left the valley, Ryan didn't look back. He didn't need to. What mattered now was ahead. Somewhere in that floating city, people waited to decide the fate of peace. And he would stand before them, not as a soldier, but as the voice of something they never understood. The girl, the beast, the man. They walked together into a future the galaxy wasn't ready for. But the galaxy would have to listen. Asterisk the floating city of the neutral rings shimmered like a jewel in the black void. It spun slowly above a dead planet, held in place by ancient thrusters and politics too fragile to touch. Ryan's ship arrived in silence. No fanfare, no warning. Just purpose. He stepped out first. Kayla followed closely. Skarnak stayed on the transport platform, too large for the inner chambers. The beast stood still as stone, watched by 1,000 eyes from 1,000 sensors, all trying to measure something they couldn't define. Inside the great hall, the representatives waited. Some wore robes, others armor. A few had no faces at all, only glowing masks with voices that sounded like memory. Ryan and Kayla walked between them without hesitation. A female voice broke the silence. You bring a danger we've never allowed. Here, why should we listen to you? Ryan didn't argue. He placed a simple data crystal on the table. Because if you don't, you'll never understand what nearly destroyed your worlds, and what chose not to. The crystal activated. Holograms filled the room. Kayla's voice played first, soft and clear. Then came images of Skarnak sheltering her, fighting beside them, holding its ground instead of attacking. It wasn't a monster. It was a survivor making a choice. Some envoys whispered, others stood in silence. One slammed his hand on the table. That thing murdered planets. Are we now supposed to trust it because it paused for a lullaby? Kayla stepped forward. No, you're supposed to learn that even the worst things in the galaxy can change if someone dares to speak to them differently. The hall fell quiet again. The representative with the glowing mask finally spoke. So what do you propose? You want us to honor the beast? Ryan shook his head. No, honor the decision it made. And the ones it didn't. One by one, the envoys considered the evidence. This wasn't a demand for mercy. It was a demonstration of transformation, of possibility, of a power even greater than destruction restraint. The vote was close. But in the end, the neutral rings passed a ruling. Skarnak would be granted protected status. No military force could engage unless it attacked first. And Ryan would act as its registered envoy. As the announcement echoed through the chamber, Kayla looked at Ryan. It's done. He nodded. Not finished, but started. They returned to the ship. Skarnak hadn't moved. But when it saw them, it lowered its head and exhaled, not in anger, not in pain, but in relief. Back in orbit, stars drifted quietly across the viewports. For the first time in generations, a galaxy once ruled by fear now made space for something else. Not peace, but hope. Skarnak curled itself along the ship's side. It no longer roared, no longer hunted. It dreamed. And its dream shaped something new beneath the stars. Kayla recorded one final message, not for war, not for warning, but for all who might find it and wonder what happened here. She spoke of a beast once forged by cruelty, broken by war, and healed by music. She ended with a question. If a monster can change, what's stopping the rest of us? The message was sent across every free channel. It traveled farther than any weapon ever fired. And in the still corners of space, someone always listened. Ryan looked at her one last time that day and said, "Thank you for not running when the world gave you every reason to." Kayla smiled, resting her hand on the beast's side. "Thank you for coming when no one else would." Together, they watched the stars move, and the galaxy for once moved with them.